Every now and again, we receive instant classics or legendary rivalries. But in the 21st century, those days are few and far between. We always find ourselves looking back to the 80s and the rally cars of that era, or the JDM cars of the 90s, maybe even the hypercars of the 2000s. But in the 2020s, what do we have, right? Us car enthusiasts have become very pessimistic that the manual is going away, technology is taking over everything. But is it that dark right now? Is it that gloomy? No, it's not. You have the Volkswagen GTI, the Hyundai Elantra N, the Subaru WRX, the Honda Civic Type R, and the GR Corolla. Now, it's quite possible the GR Corolla not only is an instant classic, but a legend in the making. And in today's video, we're going to check out what the GR Corolla has to offer us, what it's going to be providing when it comes to performance, the handling, even the features for the interior, and see why, if you're looking at buying a great one-car solution, the ultimate daily driver, then maybe taking a look at the GR Corolla might be a very wise decision. Now, before we dive into this video, I want to give a huge shout and thank you to my good friend Aaron, also known as the GT Car on Instagram, for handing me the keys to his GR Corolla. Now, he is the Vice President of Operations at Q Car Care in Burlington, Massachusetts, and currently my Volkswagen Tiguan is there and it's going to get pampered, ceramic coated, cleaned, everything. I probably should have went the whole 9 yards though with the PPF, because up here in New England, the rock chips and the debris on the road is very, very harsh. If you live in the New England area or you live in the Boston area, you have an exotic, a sports car, even like a daily driver like mine, definitely check them out. I'll leave the link in the description below. And also, of course, if you want to contact them, you can do so through Instagram at Q Car Care, or you can contact my friend at the GT Car and they will hook you up with a great deal. Also, their quality is amazing. I have seen it firsthand. So as usual, even though this is not a brand new GR Corolla, let's begin with that pricing to give you guys a bit of a backstory of the model we're taking a look at today. This is a 2023 GR Corolla Circuit Edition, which was only offered for the 23 and 24 model years, and it was the mid-tier trim in the lineup, sitting just above the core. Car and Driver said you didn't need to go with the Circuit Edition, the core was all that really mattered. And in some ways, if you wanted a bare bones car with a great powertrain, suspension setup, and all-wheel drive, paying around $40,000 really isn't that bad of a deal. But if you want some sense of quality, some creature comforts and amenities, also a more aggressive appearance in my opinion, you went with the Circuit Edition. Now, the GR Corolla is more than just being a hot hatch, it is the quintessential JDM hatchback that we never really received in the US during the 90s and 2000s. There was always those great hot hatches that you would find on Gran Turismo, but we've had to wait 25 years to receive them here in the US, whereas the GR Corolla is a brand new sports car that you can get and enjoy immediately. Now, as you take a look at the exterior of this car, it's the fact that it looks like a street legal rally car that makes this so special and unique. Unlike the Subaru WRX with the plastic cladding and the cheap fender flares, we have a car that blends that all into the body lines and gives you a really aggressive appearance, especially up front with some of the air ducts here along the side profile and your GR badge, and most certainly for the rear fascia where those fender flares protrude out a bit, giving you a boxier, also I think a more muscular appearance to this car. And then of course, as we're taking a look at the rear fascia, we have the 3 exhaust outlets, 1 exhaust outlet per cylinder, by the way. We'll talk about that in a minute. But making our way back up front, and this is why I would say go with the Circuit Edition, or today go with a well-equipped model, is that you are going to have LED headlights and LED fog lights for better visibility at night or on those trails if you are living the rally life here with this car. What I love though is the aggressive body lines on the hood, and they're very pronounced. Also, the air vents here in gloss black. The gloss black trim pieces really do go a long way for this hot hatch, and you see that for your grille here, the mesh grille. It really stands out on this model and with this body color. Also, and I'm a bit surprised by this, you don't get functional side air curtains up front. I would love to see that, or I would have loved to have seen that back in 2023. Now, as you make your way over to the side profile, with this being a personal car, it's set up a little bit differently than what you're going to find stock or at your local dealership. We have a winter tire set up here, wrapped in Bridgestones and 18-inch alloy wheels, which I do think look kind of nice here on this car. Now, you will have gloss black side mirror caps with turn signal indicators to go along with blind spot detection for added safety. Also, we have the roof rails here, so maybe if you're going off-road or maybe you're going rallying, you can store some stuff here. Maybe if you're going to the track, you can have some items here as well. Now, as you make your way around to the back, the gloss black spoiler really sticks out here on this car. Again, I love the gloss black trim pieces on this hatch. Also, we can't forget the forged carbon roof. Can't believe I forgot that. So that helps out with the weight distribution of this car and makes it more track focused and track oriented. Now, you're also going to have LED taillights as well, so more of an upscale look to this hot hatch. And then we have the aggressive body lines once again here, which really stand out on this car. You're also going to notice the Toyota emblem as well, but this is where your rear backup camera is. This is not going to be the liftgate itself. But while we're taking a look here, let's open this up. And if practicality is a concern, I've been able to fit everything back here. That's 3 bags of camera gear, a gimbal box, a racing helmet. So if you're someone who does go to Lime Rock or Watkins Glen or any other track in the US, you can most certainly do that for sure. You're looking at right around 18 cubic feet of room, which falls right in line with the Volkswagen GTI and is slightly better than the Subaru WRX. So something to keep in mind there with this car, especially coming in under $50,000. And then one last thing here before we talk about the engine that's powering this car, you're going to have the gloss black rear diffuser, which is very aggressive here and outlines your 3 exhaust outlets. So no cladding, no plastic. When you're spending $45,000, you want to have quality, and Toyota did that here for the exterior of this hot hatch. What makes a GR Corolla a legend in the making, and also a car that's breaking barriers here in the US, is the engine that's powering this model. It is not a 4-cylinder, it's not an inline 5 or a V6. It's a 1.6 liter turbocharged 3-cylinder engine. That is right. Now, in a country where everything has to be bigger and better, Toyota is changing the game. They're proving that you can have a small engine that still gives you a lot of fun and exhilaration. So with this being a 2023 model year, you're looking at right on 300 horsepower and right around 273 pound-feet of torque. It is exclusively paired with a 6-speed manual. Later models, you have that 8-speed automatic, so if you don't know how to drive stick, you have an option there to drive this car. Also, you will have a power output close to 300 horsepower and 300 pound-feet of torque, so a bit more fun off the line. But what we have here for the 2023 model, in my opinion, is more than enough. And then on top of this, all-wheel drive does come standard. And hopping inside the GR Corolla with the Circuit Edition we have here today, you're going to be greeted by manually adjustable suede and synthetic leather seats for both the driver and passenger. Now, what's great here is that by going with the Circuit Edition, they're also heated as well. So a nice amenity here if you are going to be using this as a daily driver up here in the Northeast or in the northern parts of the US. What I really like, though, is the attention to detail for these seats. You have the suede there, but then also the GR badge on the headrest and the contrasting stitching. I really do like that, and that carries to the door panels as well. Really nice touch. Now, in regards to the comfort, though, they're firm, they're stiff. The bolstering is very aggressive, and in my opinion, with the GR Corolla, this car is set up to be more track-oriented and enthusiast-focused than a Subaru WRX, especially a premium or limited, and I do think these seats are a bit more firm than the Honda Civic Type R. That's just my take, though. It could be my body frame that I'm experiencing that today with this car. Now, some people are going to complain about the hard touch plastics on the dashboard, on the door panel, on the center console. And personally, those are very boring criticisms. I am tired of hearing that because this car comes in at around $45,000. If you want luxury, if you want comfort, you need to be in a different class. You need to be in a different segment here. This is not what you're going to be finding in any vehicle under 50 grand. You're not going to find that out of the Civic Type R. You're not going to find that out of the Subaru WRX. You're not going to find that out of the GTI either. So I think that that's kind of a boring take here. If you're someone who's looking at buying this for the first time or maybe getting into this market for the first time, don't pay attention to that, because what you're looking for is a car that's going to be fun to drive and more enthusiast focused, and you feel that here with the cockpit of the GR Corolla. Now, in front of you will be a full digital gauge cluster. Much like we see with a lot of Toyota products, it's laid out the exact same way. You can customize the layout to your liking and access important information pertaining to the engine and the driving experience for this car. So very straightforward. And then also with the infotainment system, we have checked this out so many times on this channel, and It's laid out the exact same way, very easy with quick access icons on the left side of the screen. Not confusing at all, unlike what you're going to find with the Subaru WRX. So the simplicity, in my opinion, is actually a plus here for this car. And especially where you have physical buttons and dials for the volume, also your climate control settings, your AC, front rear defrosters, fan speed, fan direction, and your 2-level heated seats. It gives you a tactile experience too. And especially now in the 2020s, you don't receive that anymore. So I personally think, even though it's not going to be the most refined car out there, it's giving you enough where you're like, all right, I'm getting a tactile, somewhat of an old school experience, but it's still modern enough where it is worth the price tag. Now, making your way to the center console for the GR Corolla, you will have different drive modes to work with for custom, sport, normal, and eco, and each drive mode has its own layout here. So I like the customizability as well. And then next to that will be your traction control on and off button. Then here we have the 6-speed manual, which does feel really nice. The gear shifts are notchy, so it's very similar to a Honda Civic Type R or a Subaru WRX. It's going to come down to what you prefer, what you like, especially with this clutch. In my opinion, the clutch is a bit too light coming from a Subaru WRX, and with the gear shifts themselves, it's not as bolt action as the WRX, but I still think that if you're buying a car like this, it's going to give you more than enough feedback for sure, especially comparing it to, say, a Ford Mustang with the Tremec. Also with the center console, you're going to notice your track button here, so you can access track mode, but even better, you can adjust the power distributions. You can go with 60/40 or 30/70, giving you a rear bias. That's actually pretty cool here. Just to let you know, that setup is going to be engaged. It shows up on your digital gauge cluster, which I think is really nice. What is a bit more interesting here with the GR Corolla is that you don't get a standard storage compartment, and that will have some major implications for the second row. We'll talk about that in a minute, but you still receive 2 cup holders. And then to wrap up here, on the left side of the dashboard and left of the steering wheel, you're going to notice a single row of buttons here. Obviously, one that controls your odometer, your trip computer, your outside lighting, but then you have your heated steering wheel. And what I like here is that you do have the ability to turn on or off auto rev matching. You just hold on the IMT button, and there you go. You're either going to have rev matching, or you can just do that manually yourself. I've been doing it manually since that's how I learned with the Subaru WRX. But I personally like what the GR Corolla is offering here. I don't get the criticism for the interior, especially from someone coming from a WRX, but that's just my take. If you want something a little nicer, you'll be spending over $50,000. Now, one point of criticism I am going to talk about here with the GR Corolla is the fact that it does feel rather cramped and claustrophobic. Not only up front with the lack of shoulder room, the lack of a center console, but even for the second row as well. You're looking at right on 30 inches of legroom, which I believe is the worst in this class, behind the GTI, believe it or not. The GTI is a little bit better, which is a bit of a surprise because the GTI isn't that big either. That's the one drawback to this car. Even the practicality, that's not the best, but I think that for someone looking for a track toy or a weekend car, this is more than enough. It gives you just enough practicality that makes it work as a daily. But I would say that if you need more space, definitely look elsewhere with the Civic Type R, with the Subaru WRX. That's where I think those two cars have a bit more of an advantage here compared to the GR Corolla. What I will say though is that with the Circuit Edition, you still have the suede upholstery here, so you have that grip. So if your friend is driving on a winding back road, you're not swaying around too much. Also, I think the bolstering is pretty good for the second row as well. Now, obviously, with this being a smaller car and the fact we don't have a center console, there is no center mounted air vents, and there really isn't anywhere to plug in your smartphone either, unless your driver is going to be courteous enough to give you his USB-C outlet. But it is what it is here. This is a sports car through and through. It's a thoroughbred hot hatch, so I really can't complain about that. In this market, under $50,000, the 3 Japanese manufacturers that give us awesome choices here with the Subaru WRX, the GR Corolla, and Honda Civic Type R are kind of like the 3 bears. But instead of having a too cold, too hot, or just right situation, this is more of a too hot, hot, and maybe even a lukewarm aspect to these cars, depending on what you're looking for and what you like out of a daily driver and sports car in this market. The Subaru WRX is definitely more lukewarm or just right because of the way in which Subaru tuned that suspension and that engine. Whereas with the GR Corolla and Honda Civic Type R, we can go back and forth as to whether these cars are too hot of hot hatches. Because with the Type R, it is basically a TCR that's street legal. And then you have the GR Corolla, which is kind of a street legal rally car. And there's a key difference though, because with this turbocharged 3-cylinder engine, I feel like this hatch has something to prove all the time. There's no relaxation here out of this platform. There's no relaxation out of this engine. Or, as the people in Europe like to say, there's no respite. There is no respite with a GR Corolla. And I had driven this car for about 2 hours a couple of months ago. And my friend Aaron gave me the keys and I got to experience it, and I'm like, you know what? I prefer my Subaru WRX, because with a WRX, the suspension is a bit softer and the engine's a bit more dulled down, a bit more dim, which does have its downside to it. I think some people would prefer a more aggressively tuned engine with that 2.4. But with the GR Corolla though, and this turbocharged 3-cylinder engine, for one, great powertrain. Great horsepower and pound-feet of torque. I think it's more than enough for a car here under $50,000, especially for a small hatch like this. You don't really need much more, in my opinion. You can have a lot of fun. You can get yourself in a lot of trouble here with this car. Also, I love the 6-speed manual. Fantastic manual. The clutch is a bit more engaging than the Honda Civic Type R, in my opinion. Not as great as the Subaru WRX. Also, the gear shifts are pretty notchy, and there is some engagement there, so I do like that. Mechanically speaking, I can't fault this car for anything at all. But the GR Corolla is one of these sports cars or hot hatches that falls in this gray zone, where you could argue that it's not necessarily the best daily. That because of its sports tuned suspension, because of its aggressive nature, this is better suited as a track toy and better suited as a weekend car. Now, I will say this here with the GR Corolla, that it is most certainly dailyable, that you can drive it. It just comes down to what you're looking for, because with these seats, because they're so stiff, because they're so aggressively bolstered, this will get to you after a while. It will emotionally get to you. Where if you want to have a car that gives you a 6-speed manual, gives you some fun, but it doesn't feel like it's abusing you with the suspension or the seats, that's where the WRX makes a bit more sense. But enough about the rivals though. With the GR Corolla, what you're receiving here, I think, is a fantastic value. You are receiving a car at around $45,000 that can pretty much do it all. Because it is a hatch, it has the practicality. Because it is sports tuned, you're going to have the capability to take on some winding back roads and have a lot of fun. Also, with the 6-speed manual, this is the way to go over the 8-speed automatic. Why someone would go with an 8-speed automatic here with this car, I have no idea. What I also like too is that the gear shifts and the gear ratios are just enough. They're just enough. Because for a car with a turbocharged 3-cylinder engine, you would expect shorter gear ratios. And yet, I have not experienced that at all today or the last time I drove this car. It is just right for public roads. It is just right to have a good amount of fun without getting yourself arrested. And that is one thing that really makes a GR Corolla so unique, but also so awesome here. That you have a car that you can drive to work, you can drop off the kids at school, and you can go to the track. That from the factory, out of the box, it is track tuned, it is track focused, but it's not so track focused where you can't live with this car Monday through Sunday. On these back roads, it handles so well. And that is one thing that I have really learned to love about all-wheel drive cars in this market, that you really hug the road and you feel as one with the chassis and the driving experience. And you know, with the WRX, you do sit a bit higher up off the ground, so you don't feel as connected to the car. It feels more like a cross-trek. Whereas the GR Corolla, you know, this is through and through a sports car. And with that, there's a lot of connectivity here, and you feel that with the steering input, and you feel that with the suspension and chassis. Also, with this Turbo 3, it has a nice exhaust note. It has a nice note in general that emanates into the cabin. And, you know, a lot of cars in this market with a 4-cylinder, especially if you want to modify it, throw in an aftermarket exhaust, they just don't sound that great. And that's a major turnoff, especially as someone's getting up there in age. You know, I kind of like the sound of V8s now. I'm becoming a boomer at this point. But with the Turbo 3, you know, it has this unique note that's actually quite intoxicating. And this right here makes up for, I think, the shortcomings. This makes up for the fact that you are going to get abused every day. That the New England roads are going to really give you a hurt after an hour or 2 hour long drive. But when you find that right back road, the GR Corolla rewards you with its overall driving experience. And this all circles back to my thoughts on this being too hot of a hot hatch. Now, if you're like me and you have these same thoughts, these same opinions, a Golf R or GTI would probably be the better alternative. But if you're someone who wants all-wheel drive, that you also want the 6-speed manual, and you want a car that always keeps you laser focused, that keeps you fully engaged, and also is, in the 21st century, far more analog and tactile than its rivals, then you look no further than the GR Corolla. This is a special car. This is one of those hatches that I think most certainly is going to retain its value over the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years. But it's going to be one of those cars that we come back to in the future and say, you know what? This was one special car, and I should have bought one. So guys, I hope you enjoyed this review for the GR Corolla. If you did, please like, comment, share, and subscribe for more, and I will see you guys next time.